In the shadows of history, beneath the weight of silence and stone, lie fragments of wars we were never meant to remember. Files stamped shut, voices erased, corridors bricked and forgotten, each concealing whispers of machines that never surfaced, convoys that never returned, and names struck from every registry. What survives are fragments, ash, wire, coded paper, hinting at a truth too dangerous for daylight. Tonight, the locked drawers of memory rattle and their secrets stir once more. On the night of the 14th of May 1945, just days after the signing of Germany's unconditional surrender at Reims, a faint echo of war stirred again in the Baltic. In the naval yards of Kiel, a small flotilla of Kriegsmarine vessels, 2 Type 1C U-boats, an armed trawler retrofitted for escort duties, and a requisitioned merchant vessel identified in port records as the asterisk Hansa München, prepared under heavy security for what would become one of the last and most enigmatic German naval operations. The British 21st Army Group had already taken Hamburg, and US Army intelligence detachments were sweeping northern Germany for weapons caches. Yet somehow this convoy, designated in captured documents as Unternehmen Eclipse slipped from port under cover of night. The mission's existence came to Allied attention only weeks later, when a decrypted fragment from Bletchley Park's Hut 4 revealed intercepted Enigma traffic between Flensburg and an outpost in Bordeaux. The decrypted lines were incomplete, but mentioned the phrase Transport Sicherungsstufe 1, an unusually high classification level, and made reference to Kisten 347, 389, bound for Neue Basis. The meaning of new base was never clarified. What little could be pieced together from post-war interrogations of surviving Kriegsmarine officers suggested the convoy carried sealed crates loaded in secret from the SS technical office near Nordhausen, where V2 rocket research had been evacuated in April. A former Unteroffizier, interviewed by the OSS in 1946, described wooden containers reinforced with steel plating and bearing SS runes, accompanied by a Höchstgeheim manifest that naval personnel were ordered not to open under threat of execution. The convoy's intended route remains speculative. Naval war diaries captured from the Siegkriegsleitung, Naval Command, mention a diversionary movement toward Denmark, but eyewitnesses in the Canary Islands later reported sighting a German freighter in mid-May, flying false Spanish colors and shadowed by 2 submarines. Spanish harbor logs from Las Palmas were subsequently edited, with pages for 17, the 20th of May, replaced in handwriting not consistent with the original clerk. The most tantalizing detail emerged from a British Coastal Command report filed by a Sunderland crew from number 201 Squadron, which recorded radar contact with unidentified surface vessels southwest of Madeira before losing track in heavy weather. After this, the trail simply vanished. By June 1945, Allied Naval Command listed the vessels as lost at sea, presumed sunk, though no wreckage was ever recovered. In 1948, during the Nuremberg follow-up trials, prosecutors briefly questioned Hans Kammler, head of the SS Construction, Office and Overseer of Weapons Programs, about possible evacuation of technical materials by sea. He denied knowledge and died under unclear circumstances. That same year, his body never conclusively identified. Declassified in 1983, a memorandum from the British Admiralty noted the possibility of advanced infrared guidance systems being among the cargo, citing post-war interviews with engineers from Peenemünde who claimed prototype components had disappeared before capture. An accompanying CIA cable from 1952 speculated the convoy may have reached South America, possibly Argentina, where German expatriate networks were known to receive fleeing personnel and material. Yet no manifest survivor testimony or cargo record has ever surfaced, despite decades of investigation. The asterisk Hansa München and its escorts remain officially missing, their disappearance filed under the category Final Movements Unknown. Whether they sank in a storm, were intercepted by Allied forces and quietly covered up, or successfully delivered their mysterious cargo to a hidden destination, remains unresolved. For historians of the period, Operation Eclipse embodies the shadow of the war's final weeks, an operation whispered in fragments of intercepted code, noted in redacted files, and ultimately erased from official memory. 75 years later, the Phantom Convoy continues to haunt naval archives, its classified cargo locked forever beneath the waves or buried deep in undisclosed hands. On the 9th of May 1945, as Soviet forces of Marshal Ivan Konev's First Ukrainian Front secured the smoking ruins of Prague, Red Army engineers began combing through the Peček Palace, a Gestapo headquarters notorious for torture chambers and a labyrinth of sealed cellars. In a reinforced sub-basement behind a false concrete wall, soldiers uncovered a cache of metal chests stamped with the Reichsadler and marked *Geheime Reichssache *, state secret. According to later Soviet archival records, which surfaced only after partial declassification in the 1990s, the contents included rolls of microfilm, carbon copy communications, and several leather-bound ledgers filled with numerical sequences written in hand. These became known inside Soviet intelligence as the Prague Ciphers. Unlike conventional German traffic already compromised by Ultra, these documents referenced a set of code keys not previously catalogued, and their decrypts revealed correspondence between SS Obergruppenführer Hans Kammler, architect of the underground weapons facilities at Mittelwerk and Hartmannsdorf, and an unidentified intermediary based in Zurich, referred to only by the initials AR. The decrypts, partially translated in an NKVD memorandum, dated the 21st of May 1945, made reference to Uran project components secured and deliveries rerouted Nordhausen-Schwarzburg sector. British liaison officers attached to the Soviet command in Prague later reported hearing rumors that several crates of materials from Kammler's weapons division had been removed days before American troops reached Nordhausen, bypassing Allied capture. The Prague documents appeared to confirm this, suggesting an organized evacuation of sensitive technology through neutral Switzerland in exchange for foreign currency or asylum guarantees. Soviet censors quickly suppressed further dissemination, classifying the files as *Osobo Vazno*, for Kremlin eyes only. Western intelligence learned of their existence indirectly through defectors. In 1951, Reinhard Gehlen, the former Wehrmacht intelligence chief who became a CIA asset, informed US handlers of encrypted SS archives taken in Prague and claimed they contained directives to move fissile research out of Germany. He insisted Kammler had arranged for experimental centrifuge components and thorium fuel studies to be transported to Austria and then beyond the reach of Allied forces. The CIA requested access from Moscow during Cold War negotiations but was refused. Meanwhile, scattered references continued to surface. A 1964 Polish-language technical journal, later withdrawn from libraries, briefly cited Kammler's Zurich correspondence on high-energy isotopes, raising suspicions that some material had circulated among Warsaw Pact research institutes. Scholars investigating the Prague uprising noted the disappearance of several SS trucks from the city on the 7th of May 1945, loaded under the command of officers attached to *Amt 6 * of the RSHA, Foreign Intelligence. These vehicles were never recovered, nor were their drivers entered into Allied POW rolls. When the Czechoslovak state archives were partially opened after 1989, researchers discovered redacted Soviet-era files listing captured correspondence, Zurich Channel, but key sections describing contents and subsequent disposition were excised with thick black ink. The surviving fragments were enough to fuel speculation. One note referenced Anlage DFR, installation DFR, believed by some to be a code name for nuclear enrichment experiments, while another contained an order to divert magnetic separator units to the Alpine storage depots. Critics argue the evidence is circumstantial, yet the precision of the code words and the secrecy surrounding their handling suggest otherwise. To this day, no one has identified AR, the Zurich contact who received Kammler's directives, though conjecture links him to Swiss industrialists sympathetic to the Reich, or to covert banking channels used to launder SS assets. What became of the seized Prague ciphers remains unclear. Some historians believe the Soviets used them to accelerate their own atomic program, explaining why fragments never reached Western analysts. Others suggest the documents pointed not to atomic research but to advanced guidance systems for the V2 successor project, materials that vanished in the confusion of collapsing fronts. The truth lies buried in sealed Russian archives, and until they are opened, the Prague Ciphers endure as another unresolved chapter in the Shadow War of 1945. A coded exchange between one of the Reich's most secretive engineers and an unknown, neutral intermediary, discovered in a palace basement and swallowed into the black vaults of Cold War secrecy. In the winter of 1947, British military intelligence circulated a confidential memorandum marked Most Secret, describing the unexplained disappearance of dozens of senior Wehrmacht officers and technical specialists who had not appeared in Allied or Soviet prisoner of war registries. The anomaly drew attention after multiple inquiries from families through the International Red Cross returned the same reply. Fate unknown. In late 1948, an MI6 operative embedded in Vienna obtained fragments of NKVD internal communications, smuggled out by a defector. These fragments, later filed under Siberian prisoner files, referenced the transfer of high-value personnel from Buchenwald and Peenemünde through staging camps near Brest-Litovsk, onward to rail depots at Novosibirsk. The documents carried file numbers consistent with NKVD WWII, Main Directorate for Prisoners of War and Internees, but when formally queried by the Foreign Office, Moscow flatly denied holding such men, insisting all German POWs were accounted, for testimony from returnees told a different story. In 1950, a former Luftwaffe mechanic, liberated from a Siberian logging camp, told debriefers at RAF Gatow that he had seen special prisoners separated from the main compound, wearing civilian clothes and escorted by armed guards. He described vast underground facilities near Krasnoyarsk, where German engineers were forced to assemble jet propulsion units under brutal winter conditions. Independent corroboration came in 1953, when the West German government received an anonymous package containing carbon copies of NKVD prisoner lists. Several names matched men last seen at Mittelwerk, including Dr. Hans Joachim Jentsch, a propulsion engineer, and Oberst Ernst Dieter Wirth, commander of a V2 launch regiment. Both men had vanished in May 1945 as US forces overran Thuringia, leading many to believe they had either been captured by advancing Soviets or spirited east. By the late 1950s, Western intelligence reports increasingly pointed toward a pattern. Entire technical cadres unaccounted for, particularly those tied to nerve agent production, rocketry, and advanced aeronautics. MI6 analysts noted that these disappearances coincided with sudden Soviet advances in long-range jet bomber design and chemical munitions. In one heavily redacted CIA memorandum dated October 1957, analysts openly speculated that German specialists detained beyond official POW camps are contributing to weapons programs under duress. The Soviets, meanwhile, maintained rigid silence. At the height of the Khrushchev thaw, inquiries from West Germany regarding missing personnel were met with diplomatic stonewalling. Families petitioned for answers, yet no graves, no repatriations, no official death certificates emerged. Eyewitness fragments continued to surface nonetheless. A Czechoslovak railway worker, interrogated after defecting in 1962, recalled guarding a sealed convoy of boxcars in 1946 marked Osobny Gruz, special cargo, guarded by NKVD officers. Through cracks in the boards he glimpsed men speaking German under heavy chains. His testimony, preserved in the CIA's debriefing archive, described the train bound east through the Urals toward Novosibirsk. After this, the trail dissolved into rumor. By 1972, British files on the case were marked closed until 2049, a rare extension suggesting sensitivity beyond routine POW tracking. When Soviet archives briefly opened after 1991, Western researchers scoured them for the Siberian prisoner files, but entire sections of the WWII registries covering 1945-1950 were conspicuously absent or replaced with falsified entries. The fate of the missing men thus remains unresolved. Did they die in secret labor colonies, buried nameless in permafrost graves? Or were they absorbed into classified weapons programs, their knowledge exploited until obsolescence, their identities erased? What is certain is that they never returned, and their absence carved a permanent void in post-war German military records. The Siberian prisoner files, referenced in fragments, whispered in interrogations, and redacted in every surviving archive, represent one of the Cold War's deepest silences, a chapter of enforced disappearance hidden behind barbed wire and snowbound horizons. In the summer of 1963, during reconstruction work at the ruined Posen citadel in western Poland, a group of construction workers broke through a collapsed bunker wall and stumbled upon a series of sealed steel containers stacked in a chamber that had remained hidden since the final German retreat of January 1945. Each container bore the SS double rune and was stenciled with cryptic alphanumeric codes An, Die 43 and Kriegslab 7/44, designations not found in any known German wartime records. Eyewitnesses later recalled that the crates emitted a pungent, acrid odor, and at least 3 laborers fell ill with skin lesions and respiratory distress within hours of exposure. Local authorities were notified, but before the find could be catalogued, uniformed officers from the Polish Ministry of Internal Affairs arrived on site, escorted by Soviet advisors. Within 24 hours, the chamber was sealed, the containers loaded onto trucks, and the site declared restricted military ground. The official explanation given to municipal authorities was that unexploded ordnance had been secured for disposal, but the workers privately testified otherwise. According to their sworn statements, confiscated years later by underground dissidents, some containers carried Luftwaffe insignia alongside the SS markings, and one lid briefly pried. Open revealed glass vials suspended in metal racks, filled with a cloudy liquid. Rumors spread quickly in Posen that the discovery involved chemical warfare materials. Confirmation came indirectly. In 1964, a CIA intercept of Warsaw Pact communications referenced Posen vault materials and linked them to Erprobungsstelle der Luftwaffe, the Luftwaffe's test facilities. Analysts speculated that the cache contained records and prototypes from the Reich's secret nerve agent programs, including compounds more advanced than the taboon and sarin already known, to have been produced at Diehenfurth. A declassified British Joint Intelligence Committee note, dated November 1965, described the Posen vault incident as a significant seizure of potential weapons research, now believed to be in Soviet custody. The citadel itself had been a site of fierce combat in February 1945, when Red Army units of the 29th Guards Rifle Corps stormed German fortifications in a brutal house-to-house battle. In the chaos, surviving SS garrisons had reportedly set demolition charges and torched documentation, yet the hidden bunker chamber, walled off with reinforced concrete, escaped detection until the post-war construction. That the materials survived, untouched for nearly 2 decades, added to their aura of menace. By the late 1970s, Polish dissidents smuggled out accounts claiming that Soviet chemical warfare research centers near Shikani had been quietly expanded following the Posen recovery. Western analysts noted a sudden acceleration in Soviet binary, nerve agent development during this period, coinciding suspiciously with the timeline. Meanwhile, Posen itself lived under a shadow of secrecy. Workers involved in the discovery were interrogated repeatedly by the SB, Służba Bezpieczeństwa, the Polish secret police, and warned never to discuss the find. One survivor, interviewed after 1989, recalled that his co-workers had been forced to sign non-disclosure pledges under threat of imprisonment. He also recounted the presence of Soviet officers wearing plain uniforms but speaking Russian with Moscow accents, who supervised the removal of the vault materials. To this day, the Citadel site remains partially sealed. Modern redevelopment. Plans consistently halt at the section identified as the former bunker, with officials citing structural instability. Researchers who have pressed for excavation permits have been denied, and archives in Moscow contain no accessible record of what was taken. What lay inside the black vault of Posen? Chemical agents, experimental weapon prototypes, or documentation of war crimes erased from history has never been publicly acknowledged. The silence surrounding it, enforced by both Warsaw Pact authorities and later by the Russian Federation, suggests that whatever was discovered carried implications too dangerous to expose. In the absence of clarity, the Black Vault persists as one of the Cold War's most unnerving enigmas. A sealed chamber beneath a ruined fortress, opened by accident, emptied under armed guard, and erased from official memory. In the spring of 1946, as Berlin lay carved into occupation zones by the Allied Control Council, military engineers surveying the city's underground transit system reported anomalous findings in several sealed U-Bahn tunnels beneath the border between the American and Soviet sectors. These stations, damaged during the 1945 Battle of Berlin and hastily bricked off, contained not only abandoned rolling stock, but also dozens of wooden crates marked Reichspostforschungsstelle, Research Office of the German Postal Service, an innocuous designation known to have served as cover for the Reich's radar and communications experiments. According to a declassified US Army Counterintelligence Corps (CIC) field report, the crates were filled with coded technical manuals, Luftwaffe reconnaissance photographs of British and American industrial centers, and schematic drawings of aircraft with surface coatings described as radar absorbent. The Soviet command discovered parallel caches in their sector, and within weeks both sides had posted guards at tunnel entrances to prevent unauthorized access. Berliners soon whispered of Geisterbahnhöfe, ghost stations, where Soviet patrols and American MPs confronted each other in the shadows of the underground, each aware of the other's presence but neither side daring to escalate. A 1947 British intelligence cable from the Berlin Sector Control Office noted that several unidentified containers removed under Soviet escort emitted traces of chemical vapors. Subsequent access denied. The Americans, for their part, quietly relocated at least 10 crates to Tempelhof under Operation Dustpan, a cleanup effort nominally focused on Nazi archives, but in reality a cover for sensitive recoveries. By 1951, entrances to these tunnels were sealed with reinforced concrete, officially recorded as unsafe due to war damage. Yet internal memoranda from the CIA's Berlin operating base referred repeatedly to the Reichspost Vault, suggesting that ongoing clandestine examination continued. In 1962, a defector from the KGB confirmed to Western interrogators that Soviet engineers had accessed their share of the ghost stations and transported contents to Moscow, where portions were studied at Zhukovsky Air Base. He described film, reels of wind tunnel tests, and fragments of a composite material allegedly capable of reducing radar signature, decades before Western stealth research became public. Meanwhile, Berliners living near the closed stations reported strange activity throughout the 1950s. Heavy trucks moving at night, unexplained power surges on underground lines, and guards who appeared suddenly and then vanished. The political symbolism of the sites deepened after the erection of the Berlin Wall in 1961, when functional U-Bahn lines from West Berlin passed through sealed East Berlin stations, their platforms dark and patrolled by armed sentries, reinforcing the sense of forbidden ground. Files released after German reunification revealed that both NATO and Warsaw Pact intelligence had issued strict orders to maintain silence regarding the tunnel contents, fearing public exposure of Nazi research that might provoke scandal or uncontrolled proliferation. By the late 1970s, the story had slipped into urban legend, with locals telling of phantom trains running through sealed corridors and rooms full of gas masks. Yet the surviving documents, fragmentary CIC reports, redacted CIA cables, and Soviet engineer testimonies point consistently to a far more sobering truth. Caches of wartime intelligence and experimental technology, divided between rival superpowers and hidden beneath a divided city. Today, many of the sealed entrances remain inaccessible, buried under modern construction or sealed by Cold War concrete. Official records refer to them only as structural hazards. What was discovered in those ghost stations has never been fully disclosed, leaving behind an unsettling echo. The war that ended in 1945 continued in silence below Berlin's streets. in tunnels where shadows of the Reich's darkest experiments lingered, guarded, disputed, and ultimately erased from public view. The archives close again, but their silence feels like warning, not closure. Beneath the pages of official history, the erased lines still bleed through. Names without graves, weapons without battlefields, stations without trains. We are left with echoes, fractured signals across time, unanswered questions that burn colder with every decade. Perhaps some vaults are never meant to be opened, but the shadows ensure they are never fully sealed. The war lingers, even where no records